Hi there, folks. Saber4 here, back with part 2 of our look at the Legends of the Force spoilers. And this week, something I'm really excited about. We got Legends of the Force meets the Knights of the Old Republic. I was a big fan of the Knights of the Old Republic video games. Played both number 1 and number 2, way back when they were on Xbox. Played the Star Wars: The Old Republic, as it has been a computer game here. Love the story behind it, and am really excited to see this kind of grow into the Star Wars Unlimited universe. So that's what we've got this week. We're going to be following this kind of series as we go and as we get spoilers over the next couple of months. But if you like these kinds of videos, please subscribe to the channel. We'll have more of them as we go. Each of them are going to go in an order where we do content with leaders, units, events, and upgrades. And now that we have enough card volume, I'm going to give you a couple of deck ideas every time that we go through. So let's go ahead and hit to it. First off, we have Darth Revan. Darth Revan is going to be our first villainy-only leader. And his reactionary ability, so he's not going to cost you an action to do this, but his reactionary ability is when a friendly unit attacks and defeats a unit, you may exhaust this leader, and if you do, give an experience token to that unit. So anything that you've got on the board that is attacking and surviving, Revan is going to be able to give an experience token to and let those things grow. He comes out on 5 resources and has the Force and Sith traits, and he unlocks that ability to be able to be used every time one of your units crashes into and defeats another enemy unit. And so that can be extremely powerful, and that includes himself. So as he goes through, he can grow as well. The unfortunate thing here is that Revan got a 3/6 stat line at 5, which is a little bit below what we see with Quinlan Voss. We've seen 7s come out with a 5 health on multiple occasions. We've seen 9 stat points come out several times, most notably I've put here Director Krennic, because Krennic not only has a aspect that goes along with him, but he also has Restore 2 instead of Restore 1. He has 7 health, and as soon as Krennic is damaged, he gets to be a 3 attack as well. And so notably, some of the ability that Revan has here is just a little bit worse than what you're getting in Krennic. However, some of it can be a lot better. We're going to see some synergy with We're going to see a lot of synergy with Force in this set. We're probably going to see some synergy with Sith as we go, but we have the ability to grow our units as we defeat enemy units, and so that's going to be big for him. And is that going to be enough to offset missing an aspect? We'll see. That's one of those things that we'll have to answer as we go. The other couple of questions that are kind of burning here are we going to see dual aspect bases? So far, every base has been 1 or 0 aspects. And are we going to see something that comes along maybe with significantly less health, but that gives us aspect to 2 parts at once? The other question that we have here is what Force payoffs are we going to get? We know that Aggression, for example, has access to Force Throw. And so HK-47, who you'll see a little bit later, leads us towards red and leads us towards that aggression aspect. And so, are we going to get enough things in other colors to kind of pull us down other paths? Or is this the villainy that's probably going to go towards red and probably going to go towards mono red instead of being able to use aggression at 4? Anyway, that's Darth Revan. Let's go ahead and move on to our next leader, who is Kanan Jarus. Kanan Jarus is a Spectre. This is huge. He has 4 traits with him: Force, Jedi, Rebel, and Spectre. And so this is a really big get for a Vigilance Heroism leader. Couple of notable things here. He does not have the ability like his counterpart Hera, who is the only other Spectre leader so far, to allow Spectre units to come in without aspect penalty. And so you are going to have to kind of choose for now which other aspect you're going to use with him in order to maximize Kanan. He has an ability similar to the Spark of Rebellion Luke in that he uses an action, uses a resource, and can put a shield token. But that shield token is given to a creature or specter unit, which also leads to kind of the speculation that we're going to get some creature decks. We have seen with another card that we'll show in a couple minutes that we're going to get some specter support here. We also saw some specter support in the last set, and so we're seeing kind of a growing tribe there. He's a shield generator for those specters or creatures and is a 6 resource flip. He has the same 3/6 stat line that Revan had above. However, Kanan Jarus is going to come in shielded, and if you have another specter or a creature unit on the board, instead of being a 3/6, he is going to be a 5/8. And so that puts him well out of range for a couple of things and really makes him a massive body as he flips because, here's a 5/8 shielded. And getting into and through that 8 health at 6 is problematic, especially when you have to ping a shield off first. I've put here some of your creature payoffs that we have so far. That is that in Vigilance, especially if you're running double Vigilance, you have access to Bendu, and then the Zillow Beast tops out kind of where some of our creatures are as far as cost goes, but those are the 2 creatures that we have in Vigilance. Command has 4 creatures. 2 of those are villainy aligned, and so a little bit less likely to be used. And there you're talking about Jabba's Rancor and Salacious Crumb. Aggression has 6. The Rancor is double aspect as well, and so it's kind of out of your range when you're talking about playing it for 10. But the rest of those creatures, if you paired with red, are going to be available to you. So far, Cunning has none. And so, that yellow pairing would be if you are targeting more the Spectre side of things. Heroism or Neutral, you have 2. Both of those are Legends of the Force. Both of those are Porgs. We'll look at the newer Porg in just a minute. But those are kind of the creature payoffs that we have. And very much like Revan above, we're going to see what Force payoffs we get, though Blue already has in it a couple of the better Force payoffs that are Blue Heroism already has in it a couple of the better Force payoffs that are not Force Throw. Here we have our first major unit. This is a legendary out of Vigilance, 6 cost, and Anakin Skywalker. He is shown here really at the peak of that Mortis Gods arc if you watched Star Wars Clone Wars. And aspects of both Darth Vader from Spark of Rebellion and Luke Skywalker from Spark of Rebellion, in that he is the same body at 5'7" that Darth Vader was. He does not have ambush. He does not bring in other units with him, but he has Luke's ability as well. And Luke's ability, which is to go -3/-3 on something else, but that is when he's played. But that's dependent on you having either a heroism or villainy card in your discard pile. If you have both, he can go -3/-3 twice and either give you the same functional ability as Luke's maximum, or he can ping 2 different units with that power. So he's a huge get for either side, and this is going to be a couple of things that we're kind of concerned with when we start talking about, where do these decks go? Number one, this is going to be a gigantic Carbonite target. I'm sure that we're going to see as we've seen the art, it's always kind of similar to the card art. I'm sure we're going to see him as Champions of Mortis in that same Mortis Gods arc. All of that artwork and storyline is amazing. So I'm very excited to see and very interested to see what we get artwork-wise when we start talking about Carbonite. Number 2 is that he is accessible to both sides. And so, if you were playing Heroism and you're, playing anything blue, this is a great hit to be able to add underneath Luke Skywalker at 7. If you're playing Villainy and you were playing blue, he's a good hit at 6 in a spot where, we really are kind of soft. The Hera deck tries to bridge this particular turn just because there's not a huge hit to put on the board. And being able to put out something like Anakin Skywalker, defeat something that has 3 health remaining, or shutter something that has 3 attack, and then have a body the same size and a threat the same size as Darth Vader for the next turn, would be a huge get for that deck as well. And so he's going to be a giant chase card. Him being a legendary, this is going to be a really fun run that first few weeks, especially with the Galactic Championship basically following right in the wake of the release. He does have lower power than Plo Koon or Savage Opress, but he is not side restricted as those two are. Ciphods. I don't know exactly what we're going to see with trooper support, but I think it's going to be important. Ciphods is mentioned in movies, but is never seen in movies so far or in the Clone Wars series. So this is a first printing that has him as a physical character. Got some pretty powerful synergy here. So like a 5 cost, he doesn't have an immediate board impact. However, he can kind of flood things for you. Has some very important traits. He has Force Jedi Republic. 4/4 is not a great stat line, but being able to search the top 8 cards for any number of clones with a combined power of 4 or less, and then be able to play those cards through your turn for free means that he is very action churning. Decks like Nalase, which Nalase is already blue villainy, and so if you put that to blue-green villainy and you talk about having overwhelming barrage and you talk about having a lot of clones that have coordinate, popping this unit down, having Nalase flipped, and then putting up to 4 more clones on the board that could use that coordinate ability or could bring things online is very powerful. Captain Enoch, who is not a clone but offers you the same color combination. Almost all clones are troopers, and so he would get +1, +0 for every one of those troopers while it's in the discard pile. And because of the cost, he should be ready when this happens. And so you can have a very powerful turn for Captain Enoch and then come online with a bunch of things that have coordinate. And so this could be a very powerful tool for a deck like that. And then give you access to force powers. Again, we kind of want to see what we're going to get as far as force payoffs when we talk about green. There really are not that many so far, but this set is very focused on force, and we'll see where those come through the spoiler season. Finally, Marin, and she has a spot here by herself because this is really another video game that they're kind of pulling in. She appears in both Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. She hints at the further development of the Knight trait, as well as some confirmation that we're going to see like Cal Kestis. She's already in red and is a force unit, so being able to access her means that you're talking about one of the earliest force units we've seen in aggression, to be able to turn on force throw and your other force payoffs. She is slightly under our kind of normal rate 3/5 at a 2/5, but has a powerful on attack ability that lets you deal damage by discarding a card. The next thing up, this is 4 of these units. These units are all named after classes or specializations that you could have in the Knights of the Old Republic, but it's also pretty common lore accurate paths in the Jedi Order. The Jedi Consular, Guardian, Sentinel, and Knight. Each of them very well flavored to their aspect. The Consular lets you discount other units in. The Guardian, you talk about a sturdy body that's defending. A 4/8 for 5 is a very good rate. That's 12 stat points for 5. We don't have that very often. But then when it's defending, it's very, very difficult to get rid of because it defends at a 6/8, which is just massive. The force tokens, if you have a force token, this Jedi Sentinel is able to take out a 3/5 cleanly. And then finally the Jedi Knight, who is here, who gives aggression a very similar tool to what the Death Trooper had from Spark of Rebellion, but leaves behind a full 3/3 instead of leaving behind a 3/1. The Force token, before we go too much further, should be relatively easy to get, especially if you are running a heavy Force package and have one of the common bases. One thing about it to note is that you can only have one Force token at a time, so generating an extra Force token does you nothing. You get one token, you lose your token by using it, you have to gain it back to be able to have access to those abilities again. The Sith aligned, and in this case, villainy aligned. We have Darth Malik, who is from the Knights of the Old Republic, and we have HK-47, who is from Knights of the Old Republic. One thing to note here is that on cards that are in Legends, as far as Star Wars goes, you have a gold bar down here at the bottom that kind of denotes that particular thing, that they're outside of the canon and in the Legends. Darth Malik in the video games is a fallen Jedi from the Mandalorian Wars. He is a partner and friend of Revan, and has a really heavy synergy built into him that if you have a Sith leader unit on the board, which Revan comes out at 5, Malik costs you 5. If you flip Revan and then deploy Malik, you are able to bring him in ready. Now, if you're playing green and you ambush in Malik, so if you ran ECL, Malik could defeat a unit, gain an experience token, become a 5/8 with whatever health is left, a 5/8 with overwhelm that readies after the ambush, or that readied after the ambush. So a very interesting little combo there. Note that he is a legendary. So we have seen several of the legendaries so far, but Darth Malik is a legendary, kind of the counterpoint of Grogu, who was a heroism-only legendary. And then we have another legendary here in Aggression Villainy, and that is HK-47. If you haven't seen the game, every time HK-47 talks to you, he leads his comments with a statement of how he is attempting, or what part of speech he's going through. So, his card flavor text there is very well done. And then the die meat bag is something that you will hear him say quite often throughout the game. So HK-47, a nice little get. Interesting choice to be a legendary. 2 cost is nice. A 2/4 and Sith droid. So there's a lot of different things to play with there. But you combine that with Death Field events that we'll see. This is kind of pulling us toward the idea that Revan is going to have some kind of strong synergy with aggression, and we'll kind of see where that goes as the card pool develops. Heroism. Are we ever going to get a farm boy Luke that looks like Luke? And then, we had 2 units that came through Heroism that are kind of big. One is the Luke Skywalker that's here, and the other is Ezra. With Ezra, here's the thing about this. We don't have, and especially Heroism doesn't have, a Vigilance card that is a 3/5 for 3. That stat line alone, if it were a vanilla card and nothing else, would be very good. You add to that the fact that this is Force Jedi Rebel Spectre, and that he has an on-attack text that gives experience tokens. This is an amazing card that is really going to make a lot of decks viable that were not. This really opens up a lot of things for one of the ones that I'm going to show you later on with Hera. This is a big hit. Luke Skywalker, I'm a little bit more interested to see what we develop with. It looks for you to play another unique unit. It has that same 3/5 stat line, but when you play that unique unit, you can use your Force token and give this unit both a shield and an experience token. And so he has the interesting ability to grow as you're playing. And as long as you're playing a lot of unique units, your next Your next turn, he could be a 4/6 shielded. The turn that follows, he could become a 5/7 and get another shield token. He is a force unit, and so if you're attacking with him and pinging off that shield, you are going to be gaining your force token back. And so there's some potential here for him to be pretty powerful. But again, the stats that are on him and his board impact immediately are a little bit low when we consider that we have Ahsoka in this spot, who discards a card from your opponent and potentially exhausts the unit, and that we have Kira in this spot, who taxes and a card from your opponent's deck. And so his impact at 4 is less immediate. Kind of remains to be seen how he's going to do. The other couple of units that we have that are just, these two are both callouts from Knights of the Old Republic. The Sith Legionnaire is kind of the infinitely killable stock enemy in that game. And then the Forged Starfighter refers to the Star Forge. The cool thing about each of these, here we have the Sith Trooper grows when you have a villainy unit on the board. And then the Forged Starfighter has that hidden ability. So this is a 1/1 that with Raid 1 that your opponent can't just attack and remove. We got a creature package in this week's in this week's spoilers. Several things that we got here. Number one, we got Malakili and the Rancor Handler, who allows that first creature that you play to cost 1 less. He also makes it where the Rancor doesn't step on friendly units. And so this is a interesting play, considering that he's already in the right color for as far as command for the Jabba the Hutt leader, who discounts the Rancor. So interesting to see kind of where we can develop with him. The Tutka, which is hidden, and the Atun Frynok, which is hidden, are a couple of creatures which are going to make your opponents evaluate whether it's time to go ahead and grab initiative, because they can't be attacked as they're played, and both of them with that 4 power, represent a pretty big threat. The Tyrannotech force units are going to be pretty prevalent, and so having a 5/5 ambush because your opponent has a force unit. Now, note that it does not have to attack the force unit; it can ambush anything it wants. But as long as they control a force unit, this gains ambush. And then finally, I said that we had more porgs. And so here in neutral, we have the Curious Flock, who can be as big as a 7/7, just depending on how much you want to pay for them. Last couple of things that we'll look at before we show decks. Number one is Darth Revan's lightsabers. And this is a early look because we were promised several lightsabers in this particular set. We've seen Darth Maul's lightsaber already. Now we've got Darth Revan's. As long as it is attached to a Sith, that unit gains grit, which is a very nice ability. And, a +2/+2 for 2 is on rate, but gaining grit for some of these is really powerful, especially if we're talking about units that are going to be potentially bashing into and through, gaining some experience with Revan, and then gaining grit, and so he can become a really big bad really quickly. Finally, in our upgrades, we have the Constructed Lightsaber, which is another legendary that is an aspectless legendary, and it plays kind of for both sides. If you have, if it is a heroism unit, it gains Restore 2. If it is a villainy unit, it gains Raid 2. And if it is neither, then it gains Sentinel. And so the other good thing about this is that, you are talking about you must attach it to a force unit, but you get a payoff no matter what you do. So this is our spoilers for this week. Let's look at a couple of deck ideas. More events. Cure Wounds, Liberated by Darkness, Death Field, all with the gold bar. All of these were powers from the Knights of the Old Republic game. You can see what they do here. You can heal wounds from a unit. Liberated by Darkness is the same thing as Change of Heart, just using a Force token. And then Death Field does 2 to every non-vehicle unit. And if you have a Force unit, you draw a card. Mind Trick is a good one. If you can exhaust units with a combined power of 4 or less. And if you have a Force unit, then any abilities that they have are gone for that phase. A couple of deck ideas. Here is a Hera deck, and with this Hera deck, we leaned into the idea of specters and on attack. If you watch the video about underplayed cards, I think that Hotshot Maneuver is a fantastic card to have in your decks. And with this, we have a lot of ways that we can get on attack. So Chopper and most of the specters who are here, with the exception of Hera, have an on-attack ability. The General's Blade, which can be applied to several of the characters, so Kanan or Ezra or Obi-Wan, will gain an on-attack ability. And so most of the things in your deck synergize with Hotshot Maneuver. Armed to the Teeth, putting that on, will gain an on-attack ability. And so you have a lot of things that are going to kind of become more powerful or gain experience tokens or really create some ways to make bad math for your opponents. A little bit of Restore built in, a little bit of Raid built in. You've got a lot of things happening here that are just kind of interesting, and I think this is a neat little spin on where specters can go. So that's the Hera deck. Number 2, the Third Sister. And the Third Sister, I put her with Data Vault. The big thing here that I wanted to kind of move to and showcase, the problem that the Darth Maul 5-cost unit has had is that he's telegraphed. You either had to bring him in and had him ambush a couple of things, and then, he'd go away. But Third Sister allows you to bring him in hidden. That would give you time if your opponent does not immediately grab initiative, and we're talking about a 5 resource or greater turn. So there's usually a lot of actions to deal with. Well, if you bring up Darth Maul and then you put Darth Maul's lightsaber on him, you're talking about a 9/8 that attacks 2 ground units with Overwhelm. And so anything that he does in his 9 damage towards each of those is Overwhelm damage. And then we also have the Maul unit who can get that saber. Third Sister's ability is not bound by the fact that Maul comes in and ambushes. So, later on you could have your 7-cost Maul use the action off of Third Sister, bring him down, ambush with him anyway, and then the next turn, since they're not able to attack through him, if they can't get rid of him, if they don't claim immediately, you throw Darth Maul's saber on him, and you're talking about an 11/8. You could run that in a slightly more dense package of Underworld and throw that damage onto other Underworld units, and so really make a very sticky Maul that is a giant threat. So there's a lot of things that you can do with this, but this is just an idea of using Third Sister's ability and making some hay with a couple of characters that were underused. I said that we had some ideas for Malakili. This is a Jabba the Hutt deck that plays with the Rancor. And I've managed, because the Rancor discounts down to 6 with both Malakili and Jabba the Hutt, you could theoretically get that down to 5 pretty easily if your playline included, say, Dr. Revazan, who has the ability to take out something that's a 3-cost, or Boba Fett that has the ability to take down something that's a 3-cost. You get Malakili on the board and get him stuck there. You put a bounty on something with Jabba, and then you gain an extra discount. And so you could bring out Jabba's Rancor in time to be able to barrage for 11. This has some legs otherwise because it has several of the events and actions in yellow that are able to really make things complicated for your opponents. But I'm playing around with this one just to see how early I can step on people with a Rancor. And then finally, I wanted to see if I could maximize Anakin Skywalker. And so this is a modification of a deck that I've been playing with Chancellor Palpatine, the third set yellow Chancellor Palpatine in blue. And being able to put Anakin Skywalker out and know that I have both of his abilities active is really interesting for this deck. He's already in blue. It means that Childson is a good hit for this deck. It plays pretty light on yellow anyway, and so it's a fairly blue heavy to be able to put Chilton out as a 6/6, have a nice big sentinel out in front of some of the things that you want to keep. And yeah, this is a slower but interesting deck to play with. So anyway, that's our spoilers and some deck ideas for part 2 of spoiler season. Hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, like I said, please subscribe. We'll kind of keep this series going, and we will see you next time.